So today's topic is informative speaking, the principles, the types, the designs, the structure, and practical examples. The purpose of informative speaking is to give information and the receiver understands your message. So it's not enough to say what you want to say, but was it well understood? The second principle is contrast. Imagine you lived in Europe, in a cold country, and you tell someone, maybe you ask, how's the weather today? Oh, the weather is freezing. It's minus 10 degrees. Now that's clear. But the person has never lived in Europe, has never experienced winter. Is there a better way to communicate it? Yes, you can use contrast. When you say, so the person asks you, how's the weather today? And then you say, imagine, you know what it feels like when you open your freezer? The person says, yes. Okay, so imagine sitting in the freezer and closing yourself in there. The person says, wow. Then you say, no, that's not it. Imagine the freezer being 10 times as cold as it is. That's how it is here. So you have said it is freezing and minus 10 degrees, but in another way. And the person can relate more with what the weather is like. So in contrast, you also pick a similar item, but you spot out the difference. So in comparison, you spot out the similarity. In contrast, you spot out the difference. Don't overestimate the knowledge of your audience. Imagine you are speaking, you have a food product you're selling. Let's even say it's rice, for example. Don't assume everybody knows what rice is. Can you give something different that people don't know? So don't assume. Let your speech be as broken down, as understandable as possible. So don't overestimate what the audience knows. Oh, they should know this now, they should know this, they should know this. Therefore, you leave it out. But maybe those little details would have made a difference. Even if you think they know it, still say it. Then the final one is don't underestimate the intelligence of your audience. When you have to, now remember that the last 5, 4 to 8, they are for semi-formal and formal settings. That means you have time to prepare to say what you want to say. In that case, number 8, don't underestimate the intelligence of your audience. Don't assume they don't know anything, or don't assume they don't know much. So what should you do? Prepare, get more information before you speak to that group. Make research, get more, like today's webinar, I had to prepare for you guys and get more information and articulate my points for you to understand. So the way you organize your work, the structure of your informative speaking. Categorical design or topical design works for objects. Imagine you're talking about a particular, maybe someone. So like I said, object contains people, place, or things. So you want to talk about a particular, imagine you had 3 businesses, okay? You had 3 businesses, one, and they're not directly connected. Maybe you do hair, and then you have a makeup business, and then maybe you also cook. And you want to write a presentation as to these 3 businesses. You use a categorical or topical design. That means you categorize the businesses. The topical means by topic. So they're not directly connected, but they are connected by introduction and by conclusion. So you want to communicate all of them in one speech, but they are not directly connected. So for this kind of speech, you use categorical or topical design. So the first point, you talk about the first business, the second point about the second business, the third one about the third business. A more formal situation, either in your career, in your job, or you've been invited to speak, so maybe even at church, in a church meeting, a group of friends, you've been called to speak on something. You need this structure. This is so important. Generally, every informative speech has 3 parts: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Now, if you are not writing, you need to write at this point, because I have loads of information to share with you under the structure of an informative speech, because this is how you're going to apply what I'm teaching you or sharing with you in this webinar. The first thing is, before you deliver an informative speech, you need to have an outline. You cannot just wake up and go and give an informative speech. You will not be excellent. You won't give an excellent speech. You need to have an outline which you have prepared before that time. Because if it's a semi-formal setting or a formal setting, you have time to prepare. So I'm going to show you what should your outline look like. I'll show you a model for preparing an informative speech. All right, so now let's go to the introduction. Remember that every speech has three parts: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So after writing down the first part, you're going to come to your introduction. The first thing under your introduction is what you call the attention getter. This could be a question. Okay, this could be a question. It could be a compelling quotation, startling statistics, an anecdote, a story, or anything that will grab your audience attention. This happens at the beginning of your speech. You don't say it at the end. They lost interest already. So this has to be at the beginning. For example, when I made my promo video, I gave an example of an introduction of an informative speech there. And the attention getter there was, when you woke up this morning, did you think about saving a life? So it gets your attention to listen to more. Now you're done with the introduction, let's move to the body. The body, you have what you call the main point, the sub point, the sub point, and the sub point. Okay, so the first main point. Remember the designs I shared with you earlier: the categorical design, chronological design, causal design, and the spatial design. This is where you need those designs in the body of your speech. The way you will arrange your points will be dependent on the type of informative speech, whether object, process, event, or concept. If you're dealing with events, you use chronological design, where you have to arrange it how it happened. You want to describe what happened at, maybe you had a company program, a company event, and you are asked to write a report on what happened at the event. With this webinar, you don't have to go scratching your head. Just pull out the structure of your informative speech and then chronological design. What happened at the beginning, the first 1 hour, the next one, because we're talking about events. You know the right design to use. So make it one main point. The example will show you. Under the main point, you can have a sub point. So you have A, you use A. You should have at least 2 sub points under each main point. So you can't just write main point 1, main point 2, main point 3, and conclusion. No. Under the first main point, at least 2 sub points. You can't have just one sub point. You can see here it's written, you cannot have an A without a B. So you're going to have one sub point, then you're going to have the second one or the third one. Then you now have sub points. So maybe under the first sub point, you have more details to give. So this is more detail about sub point A, where you give specific examples from your research, or you can also add codes in this just to buttress the previous sub point. Now under the sub points, you can have a sub point, a sub point, like the granddaughter of the main one. You understand? Now when you're done with your main points, the body, you have to move to the conclusion. Remember, your transition has to come in here in moving to the conclusion. So under the conclusion, you have the first one is a summary statement where you summarize your main points. Be specific and concise. I'm going to show you an example. Under conclusion, also restate the thesis statement. That's the central idea. Refer back to the thesis from the introduction and reinforce it with the words. Bring it back, because you can have so much information and the audience doesn't remember what you're talking about. They even lose out on the complete, as I happened to you before, you are in a particular presentation and then you actually lose the main point. What are we talking about here? So at the conclusion, you restate the thesis statement. The final one is a memorable closing statement, a clincher, concluding remarks. Leave your audience with something to think about. A memorable close that refers back to the attention getter creates psychological unity for your audience. Imagine you began with an attention getter, and then in closing, you connect it again with another attention getter. That's a memorable closing. They'll remember what you said at the beginning and what you're saying now at the end. That's how you conclude your speech. Remember, you can apply this to your next class, the next topic for your students, the next presentation for your business, at work, anywhere, formal setting. General purpose to inform. Specific purpose to inform my audience about taboos on wearing clothes in different countries of the world. The thesis statement. Yet it is the 21st century. There are still some countries in the world where taboos on wearing clothes exist. To show you why I'm credible enough to talk about this topic. Think about it. You provide a particular service, and then you want to tell someone about why they should listen, why they should patronize your service. What have you done? Credibility material. What is your credibility in this field? Think about something remarkable that you achieved, then put it at the front. Some people are telling you about their business, and until you ask them, what have you done? Oh, I also did this. Oh, okay. I also have a picture. You also have. That should not be also. That should be at the beginning of your conversation. Look at my transition. Now let's go straight to the taboos for the first group of countries. So I'm done with introduction. I'm moving to the body. Look at the first point, the first main point, Roman numeral. There are several countries in Europe where taboos on wearing clothes exist. One line. Now, when you're presenting, you can decide to buttress the point. It's okay. But in your outline, this is for you. In your outline, just one line that encompasses everything you have to say. So you can say in bracket, it's map. That means I'm going to put the map of Europe on the screen. So this is effective when you have to give a PowerPoint presentation. This is how you prepare yourself to give an excellent PowerPoint presentation. By the way, now the first sub-point, capital A, I talk about the first countries. In some Italian and Spanish cities, local governments oblige women to refuse from wearing miniskirts, low-necked blouses, and jeans with low waist. Think about this. It's happening in Italy and in Spain, but it's the same thing in both Italy and Spain. So instead of separating Italy and separating Spain, I put both together and join them with what binds both of them, but they are all in Europe. So that is the first sub-point under the main point. Summary. Now you know. Remember, in conclusion, you have three parts. The summary, you restate the thesis, and the concluding remarks. Now you know what piece of clothes are forbidden to wear in some European, African, and Asian countries. Living in modern society, we can get evidence that there's still no free choice in choosing what to wear in different corners of the world. Concluding remarks. At the end, you see, I want to end on a very great note. At the end, I would like to cite the famous American writer, Mark Twain. Clothes make the person. Naked people have little or no influence on society. So gaining the right to wear what you want is not just a whim, it's the process of establishing your right to be an independent individual. I think you should applaud me for this great informative speech. So that was an example of how to apply that outline I showed you earlier in your informative speaking. I have my references here as well. So in conclusion, so this is my conclusion now, not for the example, but in conclusion of this webinar, the test of a good speaker is to communicate even the most complex ideas simply and clearly. And that's the reason we had to explain to you that it's not enough to say what you want to say. Was the message understood? I showed you the principles you need to use, the design, the right design, so apply. to make your speech very understandable and to get your message across. That's what makes you a great informative speaker. All right, so I have some tasks for you. With respect to this webinar, I want to know how much you understood the task, the webinar, the information I give to you in this webinar. I'm going to send to your email after this webinar, each one of you, I'll send you an informative speech that I prepared for you. All I want you to do is to label the informative speech. So what I'll do is that I will send to your email as well the model that I showed you in this webinar. So you can use that model to label that speech. So what I did was that in that speech, I didn't leave the spaces, I just put everything together. I want you to read through and then give space and indicate for me which one is the relevance material, which one is the credibility, which is the introduction, which is the body, the first main point, the sub point. Label them. I want to see how much you understood what I shared with you in this webinar. Then the next task is, I want you to select an informative topic that is applicable to you and develop the outline. So you are here for different reasons. You're going to apply this knowledge in different situations. So pick the one that's applicable to you. Think about how you're going to apply the next informative speech, or even the previous one you wish you did better, and try to write down the outline for that informative speech. Make sure it's something applicable to you, not just a random topic. And you're going to send that to my email.